what we have here today is going to be a teaching video. This video is going to deal with the problems that all of us have, bass players, from ranked beginners to professionals. And I don't care whether you're a beginner or a professional, somewhere there are some problems. And we're going to try to iron out all of our problems. It's going to take a little time, but we're going to try to be thorough about it. And this is not, I repeat, this is not something to replace the teacher. This is a teaching aid. Anybody that's ever taken a lesson or anybody that's ever taught knows what the problems are. When you go to a teacher and you take a lesson and you go home and you say, what did he say? Or a day later you get up and you say, how did he do that? And the same thing, if you're the teacher, you show a guy something and he takes a lesson and you go over it and you go over it and he leaves. And the next week he comes back and he's doing it wrong. And you say, well, what happened? He said, well, I thought I had it down. Okay, what we want to do is we have what's going to take the space between the teacher and the student when he goes home. He has something he can turn on and look at and say, he can look at it over and over again until he gets it down. Therefore, when he goes back to his lesson, it'll be a lot easier for him and it'll be a lot easier for the teacher. So I repeat the third time, this is not to supplant the teacher or anything of that nature. This is to help everybody, the teacher and the student. Now, what I'd like to do first is to introduce the gentleman beside me, Mr. John Clayton. I want to start talking about the bass. The best thing that can help you when you're playing this instrument is you have a board here. You want to learn that board. You want to learn as much as you can about this board. Know where everything is. Scales. Learn every scale on this board, everywhere. Learn them one way, the other way. Up. Learn them this way. There are extension ways. Learn them every way you can. Now, I'm not going to give you all the examples of how to play scales, but there are a million ways to play scales. Learn as much as you can about them. Every scale you can play. The next thing I want to talk about is getting a sound. The most important thing you can do with this instrument is not play fast, not play solos, but get a good sound. Play in tune. This is where you will get your job from. A guy came up to me and he said, I play the bass very good. And he played for me, played everything beautifully. But his sound was awful. And I said, just go back and learn how to get a sound out of the instrument. how to play the bass in tune and get a good sound. That's the most important thing you can do. Now, I'm telling you from an experience. I've worked with all of the singers, Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Carmen McRae, Sarah Vaughan, Bing Crosby, you name them, all of them. I played with all the saxophone players, Coleman Hawkins, Getz, Lester Young, Ben Webster, Illinois Jacket, tons of them, Charlie Parker, Johnny Hodges, Cannonball Adderley, everybody. First thing they don't want somebody playing behind them. They want to hear. That's what they want. And they will pay you for it good. And you'll work the rest of your life. I guarantee you. You're looking at an old guy up here that works all the time. Now, some of you are professionals, some of you are advanced students, and some of you are beginners. I'm going to start with the beginners. When you're a beginner, don't try to do things that you can't do on this instrument. Play within what you know. If you know this bass up to the 4th position, if you can play E scale, F scale, F sharp, G, A flat, A, B flat, B, C, D flat, D, all right, stay in that range. Learn every scale you got there. Learn your intervals. Learn intonation. Be sure you play in tune and give each note its full value. If you play 4th finger, all 4 fingers down. You play 2nd finger, 2 fingers down. And make sure you play good in your range. Now I'm going to show you, if I can get Mr. Ron Estee to come up. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Most of the time I'm in the hand position. Okay? Now that's almost, I played almost the whole thing in the hand position. Just in the hand position here. Once in a while I varied out. I didn't go past D natural, didn't go up. And the first thing you gotta learn how to do is play some good time, some good intonation, and some good notes. Don't try to stretch out when you don't know the instrument. Now, if you learn the instrument so that you can play up and down it, then you play a little more advanced, okay? We're going to give you another demonstration of that in a minute. For the time being, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Clayton.
I'd like to just talk about some basic things that you can work on. In fact, it'll be picking up from where Mr. Brown left off. Some basic things with the bow, and of course the biggest one is scales. Everything that he did just now in playing the blues related to some sort of scale, and if you can understand logically, without that, without really understanding them and having them under our fingers, we're lost. So in the beginning stages, when working on scales, it's very, very important to play them incredibly slowly, using the whole bow, I might add. So along with the long tones and making sure that our bow is parallel to the bridge, that we've got the arm weight falling into the instrument, adding nuances later if we wish with the thumb and forefinger, that sort of thing. Main thing is I start first by playing. Back. Normally I do this with a metronome. If we slow down or analyze what I'm doing, you'll also notice that at the beginning of each note, in order to give it some life, in order to give it a bit of color, I'm pulling the bow a bit faster, as opposed to, and then starting off, let's see, how's that one? Okay. And this one, that's okay too. Wrong. In the beginning, I give it a little life. I actually yank the bow, and this is getting into the nuances that we were talking about. I actually, with my fingers and my thumb, pull the bow this way a bit, along with my arm. So it's not just the fingers. It doesn't mean an accent, especially. It just means giving each note a bit of life. Note also that I'm using the whole arm. When I go from frog to tip, tip to frog, the whole arm is moving. Again, to recap what we talked about before, let your arm fall by your side. That we call comfortably straight. We just freeze that, bring it up, and put the bow in our hands. Remember, it's not locked straight. It's not this idea, but just how you look when you're practicing in front of your mirror, very important. Practicing in front of a mirror, you just raise your arm up. We'll consider that straight. Put the bow in your arms, in your hand. Start at the frog, and I move my whole arm. Basically move my whole arm in one unit. The other thing is when practicing your scales, make sure, and this is very, very important, that you hold each note firmly in the left hand. Often we'll get so caught up in the right hand that the left hand goes to sleep. So I have a checklist of things that I refer back to, and on that is, am I holding my notes firmly with my left hand? I'm really digging in firmly. Not so much that it causes pain, of course, just so that the note doesn't go anywhere. You could compare it to, for instance, the nut of the instrument is doing, when you play an open string, what our finger has to do when we close it. So here, the string is now from here, to where the bridge is. By closing off a note, the string is now from here to there. So we've got to press firmly, just as the string is resting very securely on the nut here. Anything less than that is not enough. Very important. Maintain good finger positioning. As Mr. Brown pointed out, when your fourth finger is down, all of your fingers are down. But that also means that all of your fingers are above the notes that they could conceivably play. In the lower positions, we're using fourth, second, and first finger. So my fourth finger plays the F, my second finger is above the E natural, my first finger above the E flat, and the open D. So when I'm playing with the fourth finger, everything is there. If I'm playing with the second finger, my first finger is ready. But my fourth finger, even though it's raised, is not far from the note that it could conceivably play, the F. And I do that all the way up. Or let's take another scale. So every finger tries to stay as much as possible above the note that it could play. The other thing that's very important, I can't stress enough the importance of practicing in front of a mirror. You have to know how you look. If you're not pleased with the way your posture is, then you can change it. Look in the mirror. If you notice that you're playing like this, then you can do something to alter your body and get it so that it looks comfortable. 99% of the time, if you look comfortable, you feel comfortable. When I practice in front of the mirror, I always see to it that I have good posture. In the lower positions, or if I'm going into thumb position, doesn't matter. No matter where you are on the instrument, your body should look fairly comfortable. I don't mean that you cannot bend. Yes, the body can bend, so allow it to bend. But if you find that you're playing in a position for a long time and you take the bass away from you and you're kind of stuck or deformed and you don't have to be, then alter it. one of the things I'd like to say about learning the instrument with the bow and trying to improve upon what you're doing already with the bow. When you go out and play a jazz job, when you go out and play almost any kind of job where you've got the spotlight or where you're backing people up, the bow, be in control of the bow. So we start with a basic hold, for which you can learn from your teacher, but for the German bow, basically grab the bow with the thumb here and the little finger here. You've got it. That's all you need. These two fingers are for the nuances, which again, you learn from your teacher. But basically, here and here, you've got the bow in control. These two fingers keep it from falling, and we can add little things. Little things happen with the finger to control it. Before I get into all that, though, I start all of my practice sessions with at least, well, 10 to 15 minutes of long tones. If I find that I'm thinking about the shopping list or mowing the lawn or something, then I stop. I take a break, I take a breather. But 10 to 15 minutes of long tones starts my practice session in a very relaxed manner, a very easy manner. So when I finally have to approach something else, which is going to require more concentration, I'm really cooled out, I'm really relaxed. And by practicing in front of a mirror and playing the long tones, I can see the control that I have on the instrument. So I'll set a metronome at a comfortable setting, and I'll have the metronome going. If the metronome is 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's what I can do comfortably in one bow, then I'll have it at that tempo. And I'll just make sure that my tone is one long, even tone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I'm also trying desperately to be able to play a long tone very long. And I do that by gradually. I don't really have a set length in mind when I start practicing that day. I find out first what's comfortable for me. What can I play? That's about it today. Tomorrow might be a little less, tomorrow it might be a little bit more, faster or slower. That's about it for today. So I'll set the metronome to go along with what I can do comfortably in one bow. Then I'll gradually, one click at a time, one notch at a time, slow the metronome down after having played those long tones for as long as I feel comfortable. By doing this, you can imagine 15 minutes every day, gradually you can play a longer and longer note without any kind of fluctuation in the sound. In playing my long tones, I make sure that I go from the frog of the bow to the tip. Don't get locked into the habit of just using a small part of the bow. Use the whole bow, from the frog to the tip, getting that warm sound. By looking in the mirror, I can judge whether or not my bow is parallel to the bridge. There are various ways of playing with the bow, this way and that way. We want to make sure that we have control. We're talking about control now. Later, if you want to experiment with not thinking about controlling the bow and seeing what kind of music you can produce, fine. Now control is the main thing. So we look in the mirror and make sure that our bow is parallel to the bridge. By looking in a mirror, you can see this immediately. Also, our attention is there. The band leader is there, the music is there, the conductor is there, our colleagues are there. The bass is like a face. If I close my eyes and touch your face, I'll know immediately where your eyes are, where your nose is, where your mouth is, etc. We don't have to look at the bass. It's the same thing. There are all kinds of things and areas on the instrument to tell us where we are as far as positions are concerned. Therefore, I can look in the mirror and practice having my attention forward, and as well control whether or not I'm keeping the bow parallel to the bridge and that sort of thing. I'll also, when I'm playing long tones, I'll have a checklist of things that I'll look for. First of all, in playing the open strings, I try to make sure that I'm getting what, for me, is a warm sound, a warm tone from my instrument, which is what I recommend that you do as well. You have to be satisfied with your open string sound. If you're not, you change it. And if I'm not, I change it. I go through my checklist. What can I do? I'll get into the things that you'll be checking for, but I do that myself. If I play an open string and I'm not happy with it at the onset, then I will start going through my checklist. Maybe a little bit more of this nuance, maybe a bit more weight, maybe less weight. One of the important things is that your arm be comfortably straight. If I let my arm fall at my side, you can see that it's not straight this way in terms of being rigid and straight. But this is the way I stand, this is the way I walk, this is the way I hold my arm. That's comfortably straight. We freeze that and we bring our arm up so that it's not exactly this, but as it was by my side, and we just place the bow in the hand. We want to keep that from frog to tip, basically. So I move the arm. In order to keep that, I move the arm from the shoulder, and I use the whole arm. I go this way. And then when I place the bow on the string, I move the whole arm. I don't want to fill your heads with the don'ts, but you'll notice when you're giving lessons or when you're watching other students that are having certain problems, that there will be one of the problems that they'll have, one of the problems that they'll have is that they'll play the bow and then suddenly their arm will stop here, for instance, and another part of their arm takes over, which may be fine if you're going to play something slow, but when we start having to combine all of these techniques to play some music, we really do have to use the arm. Think only arm, move the whole arm from frog to tip. The arm also is a very heavy object. If we just allow that arm to fall on the bass, that's enough. That's enough weight. We don't really need to add, in the beginning, we don't have to add a lot of weight from the fingers. We'll get into that as well. But basically, in the beginning, with the basics, start with just imagining your arm weight, which is quite heavy, being completely dead and loose and falling on the instrument. That weight is more than enough to get almost any kind of... Just the arm weight into the bass is more than enough, believe me. Then we start doing these things to color it and to give less or more. And one of the nuances that will help in your long tones, which I'll just kind of get on the edge of this subject. I won't really get into it in detail, but one of the nuances that will help your long tones stay nice and even is the usage of the thumb and forefinger and or middle finger as we get away from our arm. This is the power source. This is where we're holding the bow, where the motion is coming from, etc. This is the point of contact, where the hair is touching the string. That is always going to remain the same. The point of contact is always right there on the string. However, as we move the arm, the power source is getting farther and farther away from this point of contact. We need some help. Here it's basically the arm weight into the string idea to give us the sound that we're talking about, the warm sound that we're trying to get. As we get away from the power source, as you can imagine, we need some help to maintain that volume level. Here's what happens when I play that. I'll show you without the bow. If you can imagine the bow in my hand, I'm pulling the bow. As I get toward the tip, I gradually turn my fingers into the instrument. Turn your fingers into the bass, but do it so gradually that the audience can't say, aha, right there, that's where he started. That's not the idea. We get away from the power source, so we just add a bit of fingers. And you've got to experiment, incidentally, to find out how much is too much, how little is too little. One can overdo this and choke your sound off or make it not a nice sound, or not enough and not have any effect. So do experiment with this and find out what feels comfortable for a given situation. So with the bow in hand, I'll gradually add fingertips into the bass as I play the long tone. And of course, I reverse that. As I get toward the frog, I ease up and just let the weight of the arm take over and fall into the instrument that way.
Any questions about that while we're at it? Anybody just want to say anything, or anybody want to try it? Come on up. Come on up here. Come on up here. Well, I want you to have your questions. You come up here. Come on up.
I don't necessarily want to try that.
Well, you don't have to try that. I had to find some excuse to get you up here. How are you? All right. Now, tell us about one of your problems. Anything that you want to talk about.
Maybe rehearsal techniques and getting back into it.
All right. And what are your rehearsal problems? What are you rehearsing? Give us something that you would be rehearsing.
Well, I'm really a beginner at this, okay?
That's all right. Hey, we're all beginners at some point, you know. Don't be afraid to be a beginner, you know.
Is there something you would think of, like if you were not able to play for a while, and you'd have to come back and pick up where you left off to warm up to?
Well, I think exactly what Mr. Clayton said prior. The first thing you do when you pick up your bass is for the first 15 minutes, just slow. Practice slow, all right? And when you start practicing, if you're gonna practice pizzicato, okay, I would suggest, my suggestion is, if you wanna learn something, if you do it this way first, it comes out better when you do it this way, you know? Yes, because when I practice scales, okay, hold that for me. When I get on the job and I want to play, it comes out. I don't have to worry about it. You play those scales enough, slowly, with the bow. Then I don't worry about it when I get ready to play pizzicato, because the bow will make you play slow, and you have to take your time. I'll get Mr. Clayton to play. Just play a 2-octave scale for us, nice and slow.
Pick one.
F. I'm saying when you practice like that for an hour, and then you get ready to play this, you don't have to worry about it. It comes out by itself. But don't be afraid to practice slow. Just take your time. Look in the mirror, make sure your hands are right. Whether you're practicing pizzicato or arco. Okay? Another question. Got another?
Yes, I do.
All right.
On bowling techniques, I use French bow. So I guess I'm directing this towards John more.
That's fine.
I don't know if you're familiar with French bowling or not. You've been directing everything with the German bowling. And I lose my weight tendency.
You lose,
When
I'm sorry, you lose.
My weight. I lose my weight when I might know the tune, but it doesn't all way out bowling. and I lose to the intonation and maybe the tempo. I really don't know how to correct it. Well, other than slowing down, I can slow
Right.
down, but
Oh,
there's something else I'm missing.
All right, let me ask you a question. Can you take a German bow and do like this with it? Let's try it. Just so we can get a little idea, since we don't have a German bow here. I mean, a French bow for you. Just turn it to the side. Yes. Now show John what you're talking about now.
Stand the way you are, that's fine.
That's
No,
fine.
you can turn around.
Let's say I might be playing a piece. I don't know any pieces, but so I'll play upscale. I might lose my bowing.
How would you lose your bowing?
I think in
Do you
my
mean you lose control of the bow?
Yes, and I get a scratchy sound, maybe I call slamming on the brakes when you hear that.
Okay. Then go through your checklist. Remember we were talking about a checklist?
Merci.
Once again. Once again. Okay, don't forget to go through your checklist when that happens. So I'd play the scale, and the first time I play it, I'd think only about arm weight into the string. And again, that's, okay, so you go through that however many times you think it's necessary, thinking about just letting your arm relax and the weight fall into the string. Just try that now. Just imagine your arm as a dead weight. That's not hard to do for you, huh?
Tell me. Yeah, I remember
Just without the bow. Don't hurt his base, but let your arm. No, don't resist. Absolutely, that's right. Now just see what I mean. See how much weight there is there. That's too much actually, but let all of that fall into the string. Try the scale again. Just think arm weight falling on the base. It might help too if instead of standing on the side, you stand slightly behind it. Not really this way, but somewhere in the middle. That way, right now, I'll show you what's happening. If you stand on the side of the base, that arm weight we're talking about falling into your body doesn't work as much because now you're standing this way. So the arm weight isn't going toward you, it's going that way. So we have to use more arm pressure instead of arm weight. You know
Is that what I'm doing? Is mine going in more that way?
Well, it may be a combination of things, but if you just tilt the instrument out a little bit like this and stand, instead of like this, stand kind of behind it, just a bit. It'll make it easier to play on the E string and your arm weight will fall. That's the idea. It's a new bass for you, I know too, so try it now. That's good. Just try that. Arm weight into the bass. Just imagine all this from here going, yes. You hear a difference? It's amazing. Now back. Now descending. Don't forget into the bass. That's the idea. Into the bass, don't forget. Now the E string is admittedly a little bit more work, so we have to use other things as well to help us, which I'll get to. So that would be one thing on your checklist. Another thing on your checklist would be to always have the feeling that you're pushing slightly the tip of the bow, even though you're keeping your bow parallel to the bridge. Have the feeling that you're pushing the tip of the bow toward the floor with your finger. And that probably will help you eliminate that squeak that you get every now and then.
Aiming the ball.
That whatever, just slamming on the brakes.
Slamming on the brakes.
Yeah.
Too much rising. Aiming the ball down towards the floor. And applying pressure.
Just apply pressure toward the ground, the kind of resistance toward the bridge we talked about.
I remember you were discussing, like, put the hairs there and tilt the bow up.
That's the idea.
But is that okay with the French bow as well?
Absolutely, sure.
Feels awkward.
Stick just like this one.
Stick.
That's it. That's it, sure. Okay, so that's another thing on your checklist.
Yeah, but see, when you mention that, it's hard for me to keep in mind the parallelism for the bow.
One thing at a time. Really, only one thing at a time. If you practice, if you allow yourself to work X amount of minutes or play through the scale X amount of times, only thinking about arm weight, forget about arm weight. Then you'll say, okay, I've done that. Now we're going to go on to adding a bit of pressure toward the floor, resistance toward the bridge, right? Forget about arm weight then. Right. Only that. And then you'll find that your arm is flying out of the base. That's okay, because you're thinking about only one other thing now. Then you'll forget about that, and you'll go on and you'll think about bow parallel to the bridge. Forget about pushing the tip toward the floor. Forget about arm weight, etc. What happens is the fact that you are every day giving attention to each one of these items makes it possible for it to kind of eventually, all of the ingredients get thrown into a casserole. And
so that
it
will
comes
blend my
out.
sound out, so
Exactly.
I won't be screeching here and there too
Right.
much.
And you'll probably, the thing that'll probably too will happen is that you will discover by going through your checklist what the one thing is that is probably causing the screech more than anything else.
I need more exercises for these as well.
Besides scales?
Yeah.
Fine. There are a lot of exercises available, but I suggest, first of all, that the scales be the biggest bulk of your diet and get them out of the way. Because scales are something that you're going to use all the time. Every time you touch the instrument and play music with somebody, you're going to play scale. So if you're having trouble with them now, get that out of the way. That's number one.